What's up? Welcome into this Sunday night edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm joined on today's show with John Breech here, breaking down our 6 points. We're going for 2, and then we're going to break down the playoff picture and draft order because at this point in the season, we had some big shakeups to both of those over the course of the weekend. But let's start with the game that just wrapped up, Breech. Packers-Vikings looked like it was going to be a laugher. Packers roar back, but the Vikings and their one-score game dominance continues. I actually have a theory. So they win 27-25. KOC just makes these close just to pump his stat padding. He just wants to pad his one-score game stats by making these blowout wins, ultimately one-score games, so he can continue to be the best in NFL history in those situations.
Renner, did you take a nap? Were you thinking, I'm just going to take a nap before the podcast starts? It's 27-10 with 10 minutes left in this game. It's over. You took a nap, didn't you?
I was debating it. Actually, my girl was laying here on the bed. I had to wake her up for the pod. She was watching it, and then it's over. I'm like, okay, this is over. I start making food. She goes to bed. I'm like, hey, the game's over. They almost won, but I got to do the podcast now.
You know what's crazy is I had to check my DVR because I was wondering if I was watching the first Vikings-Packers game because it literally felt the exact same way where we saw Minnesota just jump out to this huge lead. And really, I mean, look, man, you watch more Packers football than anyone, but that's kind of been the Packers' MO this season against these good teams. They fell behind against the Lions, fell behind twice against the Vikings. Didn't really fall behind against the Eagles, but that game is in Brazil, and we don't count things in Brazil. But really, it's just if you're going to fall behind against these good teams, you're burying yourself in a hole that's almost impossible to get out of. And you could see that Jordan Love was frustrated with what Brian Flores was doing on defense. And then you had Sam Darnold out there just torching the Packers. And I think that was probably the biggest surprise because every week I feel like I have this inner debate with myself. Should the Vikings give Sam Darnold a huge contract or should they let him walk in free agency and put all their marbles in the J.J. McCarthy basket? And you see a game like this and you're thinking, how could they let Sam Darnold walk? Because this team might be the number 1 seed if they could beat the Lions next week. So, I mean, the Vikings look great. Sam Darnold looks great and the Packers look okay.
Yeah, the Packers are in a weird situation where they have 5 losses. They are all 5 to the teams that are ranked first, second, and third in the NFC right now. They've lost twice to the Vikings, twice to the Lions, once to the Eagles. That's their 5 losses. So they're kind of this clear tier ahead of that middle, that end of the pack wildcard teams. They just proved that over the last month. They kicked everyone's ass.
The Packers are the second tier by themselves.
Yes,
the top 3 teams.
Exactly. And so they're in this weird spot where they've kind of, and in all those games, it's been close, but they've been clearly outclassed in all those games, whether it was week 1, which even going back to that game, it's at this point, it doesn't really matter. Those are different teams at this point. The field was weird. But the 2 games against the Lions, they looked outclassed. The 2 games against the Vikings, they looked outclassed. Made them semi-close at the end, but they're in this weird situation where I don't think they can really make noise. I don't think they can beat 2 of those teams. Maybe they pull off one wild upset and get one of them, but it's just going to be really hard now going on the road 3 straight weeks for the Green Bay Packers to really unseat any of those top 3 teams in the NFC, in my opinion.
What do you think their biggest issue was? Why are they falling behind so far? I mean, obviously on that first drive, Packers moving, fumble. Second drive, Matt LaFleur is thinking, you know what? We don't want a field goal right now. We want to go for it. We want to get a touchdown this drive. You fail on 4th and 2, and it kind of felt like the game flipped after that because you saw the Vikings go down, get a field goal. It's 10-3. Then they kind of run away with it until the 4th quarter.
Well, I think there's 2 big things. One is their secondary right now. Their secondary is flat out not good enough, especially when you're facing Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. To those 2 receivers today, over 150 yards between them, 377 total to Sam Darnold. It's they did not win their one-on-one matchups. Where you flip the side, the Vikings won their one-on-one matchups. The entire first half, they played man coverage on 3rd downs, and they basically got off the field on every single one of them. So that's the big difference right now, I think. And the Lions, obviously, their defense, we'll get to them and their woes, as the weeks go on. But the Packers right now, they're just not good enough defensively, and then they just don't have the consistency of execution offensively. They have guys with drop issues. They have fumbled at inconvenient times in those games. And then Jordan Love will just throw it up for grabs here and there. So that, to me, is where they're at. They're just a little too inconsistent offensively and a little too leaky on the back end. That's a recipe for a team that could even be a round one exit in a couple weeks here, unfortunately. But the Vikings, when we flip the side, all they have to do next week is they're winning. They're the 1 seed, which who would have guessed that? Even when everything was going well and they traded for Cam Robinson, I was like, man, I don't know if I would have given up draft capital. I don't think this is their year. All of a sudden, this might be their year, John.
It's unbelievable. Look, they start 5-0. They go into that, I think, week 6 bye. And then they lost 2 straight games coming out of the bye. And one of our NFL editors is a huge Vikings fan. It felt like every Vikings fan was having a flashback to like 2014 or 2015 when they started out 5-0 and then became the first 5-0 team ever in NFL history to miss the playoffs. And so it almost felt like, oh my God, is that going to happen again? But then you look at those 2 losses they had coming out of that bye. It was the Detroit Lions. It was the Los Angeles Rams, 2 teams that we know are very good right now. So it just wasn't a big deal. And so I think that is the difference, the kind of confidence that Kevin O'Connell has instilled in the team, which, by the way, if I had to vote for Coach of the Year at this point, I think I'm giving 100%. It to O'Connell because Sam Darnold is his quarterback, and this team could be the number 1 seed in the NFC, which is just the most bizarre thing we've seen since probably Vrabel leading Ryan Tannehill and the Titans to a number 1 seed. And so what he's done with Darnold, and yes, look, you have Jordan Addison, you had Justin Jefferson, as you mentioned. When you have a great receiving core, it makes being quarterback a lot easier, but you still have to make the throws. You still have to avoid the pass rush. You still have to be able to run this offense, and he's running it better than he's playing quarterback at a higher level than almost anyone else right now. And because of that, man, maybe they're a dark horse to get to the Super Bowl because I didn't really feel like they were a Super Bowl contender until maybe the past couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the 1 seed, you're a Super Bowl contender. You know, I don't. We can make all the excuses we want about how they got here and how maybe they're lucky to get here with only 2 losses, but you end the season with only 2 losses, you're a Super Bowl contender in my book. And I do think the biggest difference in this game is I got to give a hats off to Questito Fomensa, Byron Murphy, Stephon Gilmore, 2 guys signed via free agency that were making plays left and right for the Minnesota Vikings on the back end. You know, locking down these vaunted Green Bay Packers wide receivers while Tom Brady continuously referred to him as Gilly Lock all game to make everyone at home very uncomfortable, in my opinion. But that was like to get 2 guys who are very lowly paid, middling deals, to play that well in their secondary, to have the secondary that they have, to be able to shut down a Green Bay Packers offense that no one has been able to stop in the past month and a half. You just got to give a hats off to them. When they're playing that well on both sides of the football, yeah, this is a Super Bowl contender in my book. All right, let's get to the 1 p.m. window. The story from that one, the Indianapolis Colts, all they had to do was win out and hope the Broncos lose next weekend after they obviously lost on Saturday, and they were your last wild card. And it wasn't hard either. It was this week against the New York Giants, next week against the Tennessee Titans, I believe, and that was that. 2 easy games, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL, and they are your last wild card if the Broncos lose to the Chiefs in Week 18. But they lost and gave up 42 points to the New York Giants. 45 points. I forgot about that late field. 45-33. Giants haven't scored 40-plus points since 2019. They do it in a utterly ridiculous win, and now it's one of those rare opportunities where both fan bases go home pissed because now the Giants are no longer the 1 seed. Which fan base is more upset after this one, Breech?
Well, I have to say this has to be the first time in NFL history where both teams just choked away what they needed to do. Yeah. I would say probably Giants fans, because you have sat through 16 weeks of absolute misery, of pitiful football, and your light at the end of the tunnel was that number 1 overall pick. The Drew Lock has to wake up this morning feeling dangerous, throw for 309 yards and 4 touchdowns, and now what in the hell is happening? You just drop straight down, and you don't know where you're going to end up. You have to trade up to get a quarterback now and give up assets, and it's just absolutely crazy and bonkers. So I'm sure if you were a Giants fan, you are probably a little more upset. But I will say, as the Bengals homer here at CBS Sports, every one of my family Bengals fans, so we have a text thread going for this game because this impacted the Bengals' playoff chances. The Bengals needed the Colts to lose this game. And it was just like, what the hell is happening? How are the Giants possibly winning this game? Malik Neighbors scored another touchdown. Oh, my God, there's a kickoff return for a touchdown. I mean, this was an all-time choke job by the Colts. As you said, Mike, all they had to do was beat a very bad Giants team that was only averaging 14 points per game going into the 14 points and somehow scored 45. And you just look at what Indy did. I think that earlier this year we saw Joe Flacco play a few huge games, and it was, you have to play him over Anthony Richardson. But man, Joe Flacco is just Jameis Winston light, or Jameis Winston heavy, or just the other version of Jameis Winston, where you don't know if you're going to get 5 interceptions or 5 touchdown passes. You don't know what Flacco's going to get off the couch that morning. And we saw that guy today, 2 interceptions. That's a big reason they lost. Special teams meltdown. They gave up the kickoff return touchdown. Matt Gay missed a field goal. I mean, it was just a total meltdown. So if I'm a Giants fan, I'm more mad. But if I'm a Colts fan, I'm probably upset that I don't know where this team's going.
I will say, if you're a Giants fan, there is reason to be encouraged. Malik Neighbors, 171 yards in this, 7 catches, 2 touchdowns. He looked like rookie year Jamar Chase, where the guy he may not be running the craziest route tree. Like, the plays he's making are just like hitches, like comebacks. It's nothing special. But when he gets the ball in his hands, all of a sudden, it's just like no one can tackle him. No one can catch him from behind. Guy has a different gear to him that no one else in this rookie class even can match. And at his size is wildly dangerous. So, like, you have to think, if Drew Lock can go for over 300 yards and 4 tutties with this receiving core, because it is pretty darn explosive what they have, you just get a competent, you go get Sam Darnold in free agency, right? You go get Jameis Winston in free agency. You go get anyone who can play the quarterback position at even a mediocre level, and you can see massive year-on-year improvement. But the problem is, as you mentioned, you ain't getting the number 1 now. And if you are, it's going to take a big trade up to do so, because as it stands, and we'll get to a little later, New England Patriots scheduled to draft 1. They play the Bills next week. Doubt they're beating the Bills, even if the Bills aren't playing their starters. We'll obviously see how that one goes. But they're not getting up to number 1 overall without trading at this point. And so remains to be seen if they will want to give up that kind of draft capital. But I do think that if you're a Giants fan, you at least see that you have some pieces there to work with for the future. But if you're a Colts fan, it's like, this was the opportunity to make the playoffs. You've had some lean years there in the Chris Ballard era. It just seems like every time they think they're on the precipice, they just take 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. And this seemingly was another 2nd step backwards sort of year for the Indianapolis Colts.
Mike, let me ask you something real quick about Rookie of the Year. Obviously, it feels like Jaden Daniels is going to win it. Are you a little disappointed that Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers, I guess would be the other guy, just aren't even in the conversation, even though they are having historic seasons?
I'm a little upset about Bowers, right? Because he is maybe the best tight end in the NFL, at least as a receiver. Not best all around, but the best receiving tight end in the NFL. If you could be the best of your position as a rookie, Jaden Daniels is very good. Not the best. If you can make an argument he's top 5, I could buy that. I probably wouldn't put him quite top 5, but he's definitely not the best. Brock Bowers is the best in the NFL. And it's like, if you're the best of your position, you just don't win it just because another guy's position gets more notoriety. I feel for that guy because he's been freaking awesome all season long. Obviously broke the rookie receiving yardage record today, already had the receptions record, and broke the just rookie receptions record wholesale. Puka Nacua held it. He broke it wholesale in 16 games, not even 17. Didn't need the 17th. He's already done it in what was the old season. So, yeah, I do feel for him. Neighbors is like been awesome. Could have won it if he had a quarterback. Honestly, probably would have won it if he had a quarterback. But I think you're seeing as a Giants fan, you're like, damn, that guy's something different.
And I feel like that is the key part there is that you look at Brock Bowers catching passes from Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ritter, Gardner Minshew, and Neighbors catching passes from Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito. I mean, you're catching passes from those guys. That's got to get you in the conversation, but unfortunately it won't because the Commanders probably going to the playoffs.
And this rookie receiving class, to just kind of get off on a tangent here, awesome, man. I mean, it's crazy that Marvin Harrison's been probably disappointing based off of what he was billed as. Still might end up with 1,000 yards on the year, still on the precipice. But we already have Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, Malik Neighbors over 1,000 yards. It's like this rookie class of wide receivers, they're going to be, as advertised. They just look as advertised, and there's numerous other guys who have flashed in some way, shape, or form. So hopefully, I think I said before this year's draft, I was like, draft a wide receiver and an offensive lineman, just like they're both too good. You won't regret it. I don't think a lot of people that drafted a wide receiver or offensive lineman this year have regretted it so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
yep.
Go ahead.
No, and Brian Thomas, I feel like, has flown under the radar. You mentioned him, but I just feel like no one talks about him because he's in Jacksonville. He is awesome.
He has been. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to Saquon Barkley. Points 2 through 6 right after this.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have a... Wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance. But you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount+. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, as we come back, remember to like, subscribe, follow Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pushing the Pile, wherever you get them, so we can keep growing, keep giving you segments like this one as we move on to point 3. Saquon Barkley, Philadelphia Eagles, newly minted Philadelphia Eagles running back, becomes the 9th running back all time to break 2,000 yards. He did it in the 16 games. It seemed like they really wanted him to do it in the 16 games because they gave him 5 carries in the fourth quarter when they were already up 27 points. And I think in like any other game, they would have been like, we're not giving him any more carries. But that got him over the 2K mark. He now needs 100 more in a meaningless Week 18 game to catch Eric Dickerson's record. Do we put him on the field if we're Nick Sirianni to go chase that record when they are locked in the 2 seed? That won't be moving. They cannot get the 1 seed anymore.
I actually think this is one of the wildest quandaries in NFL history because on one hand, this is one of the most hollowed records in NFL history. It has stood for 40 years. We've only had one guy really come even close. That was Adrian Peterson when he came 8 yards away in 2012. Other than that, you've had guys hit 2,000 yards, but the record has never been under threat like it is going to be this week. And so I'm sure Saquon Barkley loves the poetry of this, possibly doing it against the Giants. But if he goes out there and he gets injured, and you don't have him for the playoffs, my God, I think Nick Sirianni would get fired before the postseason even starts. And so I think that you have to go for the record. And I do think that Nick Sirianni is going to sit down with Saquon and be like, look, this is up to you because you're going to be the guy making history. I would love for you to break the record, but I also want you healthy for the wild card round because the ultimate goals here is the Super Bowl. Well, the Eagles, whether they win Super Bowl or not, everybody's going to remember Saquon breaking the record in 2024 if it happens. So I think if I'm the head coach, I put him out there. Now, that being said, he only had 40 yards at halftime in this game, and it just felt like he's not going to get anywhere close. That makes the decision easy. If he's more than 150 yards away, you probably leave him on the bench. But then, as you said, he goes off in the second half, especially in that fourth quarter, gave him those extra carries, and now you're in a dilemma. What are you doing there?
I completely agree with you that it is a massive dilemma. And to all the people that say, like, of course you don't play him, you want to win a Super Bowl. It's like, I think that takes away from a little bit of what also makes the game as special as it is. Like, I got into this job that I am now not because I just loved football, but because I love the statistical nature of football. Like, I loved poring over the stats, comparing those things. Like, that was how I got into the game. That's how I got into PFF, was because I loved that stuff. And so that is a big aspect of the game for a lot of people, and records of that nature. I mean, there's a reason why Mark Gastineau was crying to Brett Favre just a couple weeks ago, right? It's because like those things, those milestones do hold weight and do mean more than just a Super Bowl. And yeah, it's an individual milestone. In football, it's a team game, but it is a debate. And I think that's why, though, you saw him, Nick Sirianni, giving him the carries this week, because yeah, the game was out of hand, but it was still early in the fourth. He's feeding them. Tanner McKee's in the game, third string quarterback. Like, you can, if he had gotten hurt or had like gone down, pulled something, then you can still kind of defend it and say, you know, would play to whatever the whistle. Knowing that this Week 18 game is fully meaningless, that there is nothing on the line here, so that if you were trying to pump him up, play him to get him to 2,000 and he wasn't getting there because they obviously wanted to get into 2,000, then you would have some people being like, what the heck's going on? We got a game next week, right? He has to play next week. We're getting some tread on the tires in Week 18, 20 carries or whatever, just to get him to 2K or to get him that record. I think you're going to get some blowback from Eagles fans. So if I had to guess, I bet he goes out, half dozen carries in the first quarter. If he's rolling, they let him go for a half. If he's not, I bet they don't really push him to try to go for it.
Yeah, and I think because the other thing you have to think about here is, as you said, you give more carries, that's more wear and tear on his body. And the Eagles are staring at a possible game with the Commanders We'll talk about the playoff picture later, but that's not a gimme. That's not a game.
Yes.
This isn't playing the Houston Texans where you feel real good about your chances of winning. This is a team that has already beaten you and could definitely beat you. So you have to take that into consideration. But yeah, I think you have to go for history. And I think your strategy makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but all that being said, Saquon, man, has been lights out. I don't want to say I saw this coming. I predicted him to be Opoy. I knew that the difference between what he ran behind in New York and what he was about to run behind was insane. That all being said, I did not expect 2K. I did not expect 2K in 16 games. So great to see that he did it in the old record so that we don't have to put an asterisk next to that number if he doesn't play in week 18. All right, let's get to point 4 here. Rams, going back to Saturday, win over the Arizona Cardinals. Late interception for Akella Witherspoon off the helmet of Trey McBride. A crazy ending to that game. All but gives them the NFC West. They now just need either the Commanders to win tonight or the 49ers to win tomorrow, and they officially clinch. Now, they could clinch also with some wins, some other teams winning in Week 18. It's a very easy path. There's like a 99.9% chance. Like it has to be a needle threading for the Seahawks to get back in the playoff picture. So we're going to act as if the Rams are in. What kind of a threat are the Rams in the NFC? Because we just kind of went over the Vikings and Packers and how they stand compared to the rest of the NFC. Do the Rams, now that they'll be getting a home game, more likely than not be playing the Green Bay Packers probably in that round 1? Do we give them a shot of making another run towards the Super Bowl?
Real quick, I will say, if you're a Seahawks fan and you want your team to get the playoffs, just bet the parlay, because if that hits, it's like 12 teams the Seahawks need to win the strength of victory into Week 18. You'll be a millionaire. You can retire, and you won't care who makes the playoffs. But with the Rams, I feel like they're really dangerous. And now, having said that, this is a team that has not scored more than 20 points over the past 3 weeks. So you're a little bit worried there, but their defense has really been coming on and been playing really well. Nobody scored even 10 points on them over the past 3 weeks. And I think that is the bigger deal, because I think Sean McVay will have this team ready for the postseason. I think the offense will be ready to roll. And I really think I picked the Rams to win NFC West this year because I thought they could be dangerous. And it's really, you look at what they've done this season. They went toe-to-toe with the Lions in Week 1. That was the first and only game they were fully healthy for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
And they probably should have won that game. There were a couple decisions that little up in the air, and I do think LA should have won that game. So then you look at, they didn't get Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back on the field together until Week 8. You know who they played in Week 8? The Minnesota Vikings. Vikings have 2 losses, one of them to the Los Angeles Rams. So now you're talking about a team that went toe-to-toe with the Lions, beat the Vikings, and put up 48 points on the Buffalo Bills. So I feel like the Rams are the dark horse contender in the NFC that could come out of the Super Bowl. You were talking about your top tier. It's the Lions, the Eagles, the Vikings. The Packers are on that second tier by themselves. The Rams are over here on Mystery Island, where they could go out in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised. They could end up in the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what to do with this team, so they're my dark horse to get to the Super Bowl.
Their defensive turnaround has been incredibly impressive to me. Like you mentioned, 3 straight games holding teams under 10 points. Now, why I am not necessarily buying in is because they've also had 3 straight games themselves where they haven't even scored 20. This offense has not looked like the offense we thought when it's like, hey, they're at full strength. They even had Tyler Higbee back this week, their tight end. They should have been rolling, right? You should be seeing 30+ every single week. We thought this would be like the Detroit Lions, right? This juggernaut of an offense. And that has just objectively not come to fruition, which is why I'm like, I think they can win a game. Do I think they can win 3 games in a row? Do I think I can get their best effort for 3 straight games, given what the rest of the NFC playoff picture looks like? Because there's no skips on that schedule. I just don't see it. I think they are right there with the Tampa Bay Bucs. So we'll get to our point 5, which is the Bucs themselves right the ship this week. They blow out the Carolina Panthers, score 48 points, only allow 14. They have a defensive turnaround themselves. They pressured Bryce Young higher at the highest rate of any team in any single game this season, 68.4%, all over them, their defensive line. And they're another team where it's like, we've just been saying, can they figure it out on the defense side of the football? Because their offense can put up points than anyone. The Rams similarly, but the Rams seem more inconsistent offensively. So I guess I'll pose this to you. Which one do you trust more of those two? Or will you buy more of those two to get through the NFC?
You know what the funny thing is with the Buccaneers? This is 2 years in a row. Last year, the Saints signed Derek Carr. Everyone's on the Saints bandwagon. They're going to win the division. This year, the Falcons had Kirk Cousins, and it's the Falcons are going to win the division. And if there's a team that's not going to win it, it's a team coached by Todd Bowles with Baker Mayfield as the starting quarterback. And here they are once again. Very, very plausible scenario where they end up winning this division. And I think when you look at what they've done, it's not even just this Panthers game. I think the game that impressed me the most was a couple weeks ago when they blew out the Chargers 40-17, because the Chargers play a style where they're really unblowoutable. I mean, you look at all their losses this season, they don't have any losses by more than 10 points except for that game against the Buccaneers. And so the Buccaneers just have this firepower to keep coming at you. I mean, we saw it in the game today where you don't know who's getting the ball on offense. I mean, Baker Mayfield completed passes to, I think, like 10 different receivers. Mike Evans playing out of his mind, which doesn't seem possible because he's been in the league forever. And Bucky Irving, I mean, my God, if he's on your fantasy team, he just won you a championship today. And so I trust the Rams coaching staff more, but I trust the Buccaneers overall roster more, if that makes sense, because I'm not sure how I feel about Todd Bowles in big game situations. But, man, I do think the Buccaneers are very dangerous. I mentioned that Chargers game. They've already beaten the Commanders, the Lions. They beat the Eagles. Yeah, they beat the Eagles. So that's 4 wins right there over playoff teams. So I Buccaneers, I think roster's more dangerous. Rams coaching's more dangerous.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that's the Rams' biggest deficiency right now. It's just they're not as talented. You can slice it any way you want it about how good they should be. But they just, if you really went position group by position group, they are outclassed by a lot of teams around the NFC. The Buccaneers, though, when you go that offensive line, one of the best in the NFL, that receiving core, even without Chris Godwin, because the way that Cade Otton and Jalen McMillan have stepped up this season in his stead have been exceptional. And then Bucky Irving has been one of the best running backs in the NFL. And the way Baker Mayfield is playing, 27-32, 359 yards, 5 touchdowns, just a different look to him this year than any of the years past. I mean, from watching his tape at Oklahoma through his tape with the Cleveland Browns, it always looked like something was missing, that he was not playing with the freedom, the callousness, the sort of aggressiveness that we saw on tape at Oklahoma. He always just felt tighter. In years, it was like years 2 through 5. His rookie year, he looked like that. Years 2 through 5, there's just like a difference. He looks like that guy again, where it's just he'll take any throw and try to fit it in that window down the football field, just no conscience to him. He'll throw 2 picks and then he'll throw 2 more bombs right after that, and they'll put up points on anybody. So I'll lean Bucs. I mean, I do think the top of the NFC is so difficult to get through that I really don't think it's one of anyone else besides the top 3 that ends up getting through when it's all said and done. But the Bucs are the one team that it's like, if I'm the Lions, if I'm the Vikings, who do I not want to face in round 1? It's the Bucs. It's like, I don't want to face the Bucs because of that offense and what they can do. And the fact that, yeah, the defense hasn't played well, but they're more talented than Rams defensively, in my opinion.
And imagine being one of those 2 teams. You're the Lions or the Vikings. You know, if you lose in week 18, you get the 5th seed, and you are praying that it goes to the Atlanta Falcons because you don't want to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, even if Michael Penix looks really, really good, he's still a rookie quarterback, and rookie quarterbacks have a long history of struggling in the playoffs. So, I would think you're rooting for the Falcons to win the NFC South.
The rest of the NFC is Falcons fans tonight. They are all loving if Michael Penix. They want him to be awesome tonight. All right, let's get to point 6. We went to the NFC wild card and broke down, and I guess that wasn't a wild card, NFC, and broke down who could be dangerous. Let's go to the AFC wild card, where we saw on Saturday the Chargers blow out the Patriots. The Bengals, not blowout, had one of the craziest games in NFL history against the Denver Broncos. A late Bo Nix touchdown, a missed field goal off the upright. What went wrong in that one, by the way, Breech? I know did you analyze it to see?
Well, it went wrong.
The fact they still.
My God, don't even get me started on this one. So first of all, they kicked on 3rd down, which is normal in overtime because you get a bad snap. You want to the holder can just spike it and you run the play again. That's fine. But when you have a kicker who it's an analytical thing. I get all these tweets like it's a chip shot. This was a no-brain decision. Cade York is literally hitting 50% on field goals between 30 and 39 over his past 2.5 seasons, which is almost his whole career. So it's not a trustworthy guy you have out there. So I would have sent Joe Burrow out to try and get a 1st down. Then if he doesn't get it, you kick on 4th down because it's sudden death at that point and you get the field goal. And usually when you're kicking on third down, you put the ball where the kicker wants it. It was a 33-yard field goal, same thing as an extra point. On an extra point, Cade York puts the ball in the middle of the field. So that's where you should have put it. Bengals, no, they gave it to him on the hash. And of course, he cross-bodied it. And it is hard to miss to the left when you are kicking from the right hash. That means you hit the ball really badly. Cade York did that. I almost cried, but then the Bengals won. So the tears, they were starting to develop, did not fully get there. Thank God, Renner. Thank God.
Wild one there. But they are still on the outside looking in. Your wild cards as it stands right now. Los Angeles Chargers, Denver Broncos, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of those three, and I guess you could include the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals because they are the other two that even have a chance at this point. Of those five, then, which one do you not want to face 2 weeks from now?
I'll leave the Bengals out because I think just because the way Joe Burrow is playing, it's pretty obvious. If it's Bengals, Bills in the first round, I think a lot of people would pick the Bengals. That doesn't mean everyone probably, but Josh Allen versus Joe Burrow would be wild. So I'll leave the Bengals out because that would be my obvious answer. We'll just say the teams that are in it right this second, the first three you mentioned, Steelers, Chargers, and Broncos. I think the Chargers present the most issues. I don't trust rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs, as we just said, that they have a history of just not playing well. We saw what Bo Nix has done over the past 3 weeks. Had a great start to the season, but he's turning the ball over. He's made some great throws, but also interceptions. The Steelers have we saw what the Steelers are over the past 3 weeks. They played 3 games in 11 days, and they lost all of them by at least 2 touchdowns to playoff teams. So I am not even worried about the Steelers. I will be shocked if they get out of the opening round, even if they're playing the Texans. So to me, it is the Chargers. They just play a style. Their defense is good. They love running the ball, and they have Justin Herbert. So they have the style that keeps them in games, and that's all you need in the playoffs is to have a chance to win in the fourth quarter because people wilt under the pressure in those situations. Jim Harbaugh is a big game coach. We all know that. He took the 49ers to 3 straight NFC title games, won a national title at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh alone makes it the Chargers, but when you add all the other stuff, I think it's the Chargers.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Even if the Bengals are in it, and they're an awesome story, it's just their defense still stinks. It stinks. And it's like it's not getting any better. It's just if they had to go against any semblance of an offense, they're giving up 27 plus points, right? It's just that's where they are at right now, unfortunately. So Joe Burrow can keep him in it, right? And he can get to that point himself in pretty much every single game. But I do think that the Chargers are a much more complete football team. They are going to make you win the game. They're not going to lose the game themselves. And so because of that, I do think the Chargers are hitting their stride at the right time with the way Ladd McConkey and Justin Herbert, that combo has looked the past few weeks with him healthy. Yeah, I do think it's the Los Angeles Chargers. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to get deep into – we're going to go for 2 before we take a quick break. Sorry. We have to go for our parting shots. We got our 6 points. Now we're going for our 2 parting shots. Breech, I'll give you the honors here. All
right, I'm going to say it, Renner, but I think it might be time for Aaron Rodgers to retire. I mean, he kind of put a bow on his career. He set a huge NFL record today. I don't know if you know that, Mike. He is now the most sacked quarterback in NFL history. What a great NFL
Least
record.
Sacked,
yeah.
Most sacked.
And look, when Aaron Rodgers was in his prime or even tail end of his Packers career, here's what he does. He's mobile. He can kind of move around the pocket. He'll find a guy. He's no longer mobile. He never threw interceptions because he threw darts and he was super accurate. Well, that's gone. So I'm not really sure what's left. His mind's still there. But besides that, I'm not really sure what's left in his arsenal that makes him even a top 10 quarterback, a top 15 quarterback. And so maybe there is some residual fallout from the Achilles injury, and he doesn't trust the Achilles because we've seen kind of same stuff with Kirk Cousins this year, and they're both coming off the same injury, which blows my mind that the Browns just restructured Deshaun Watson because he's coming off the injury, and I don't know why they're locking themselves. But that's another topic. This is the Aaron Rodgers topic. He's over 40 years old. I just don't know what team or why you can't. If you're rebuilding, you don't want them. The Jets aren't in a spot where they're a Super Bowl contender. That's the only team. You have to be a Super Bowl contender that just lost your quarterback midway through the season and you go out and get Aaron Rodgers. But other than that, I'm not sure where he could play next year. So if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I just go out, go to the Hall of Fame in 5 years and be happy.
Yeah. I mean, he looks like the most sacked quarterback of all time. It's not even, it'd be one thing if it was just on a bad roster, right? And things weren't going right. I think there was a point in time where I thought that could be the case early on this season. But the more he gets banged up, the more it's just like your body doesn't heal at that age. You're 40 years old. You get a little banged up, that lasts the rest of the season. And with his play style, he's not like Tom Brady. Tom Brady was taking like the fewest amount of sacks every single year of his career. He was a guy whose body did not have the city miles that Rodgers did. He was doing highway driving, So I do think that's the biggest thing, is just that it's not coming back at this point. So yeah, a better offensive coordinator, a better plan would go a long way. And I think would have changed this season had Robert Saleh been there and you had some real, like he had a Liam Cohen or he had one of these, Ben Johnson, one of the better play callers. Things would have been much different. But he's not going to go to any situation where that's the case, in my opinion. So at that point, I 100% agree. It is time. I actually saw a great tweet about this that someone said the Jets getting Rodgers at 40 is like finally hooking up with your high school crush after she's divorced with 2 kids. That's what it's kind of like, it's just like the Jets did not get Aaron Rodgers. They objectively did not get the guy that played for the Green Bay Packers for 15 years. All right, my parting shot. And this one has to do with Giants fans. I'm going to give you a little silver lining here, a little hope, because I know a lot of people were melting down after they pissed away the number 1 overall pick. And they did. Don't get me wrong. No one's going to remember that Colts win 5 years from now. They are going to be watching Cam Ward do whatever he does for probably a different team at this point. And if he plays well, they're going to be pretty pissed about it. But in my opinion, we focus too much on the draft for quarterbacks. And you can see that in Minnesota right now. You can see that in Tampa Bay right now. You can see that around the NFL. We focus too much on getting that guy with his, year 1, year 2, year 3, and what that can do for my franchise. And too little on how we can build a good culture and a good franchise and a good situation for that guy first. Because you look at Carolina may have legitimately hit on Bryce Young, right? Like with what we've seen the past few weeks, he may be a franchise type quarterback. It doesn't matter because they've given up so much to go all in on him that they're still 4-12 this year. They still stink. They still have so far to go as a roster that sure, that's going to be a good thing to get that guy, secure that position. But you may go years, you may go to year 5 and not actually know if he's a guy who can get you to the precipice, right? Get you to the top of the heap because you had to give up so much in the draft. So we focus too much on the one piece at quarterback and too little on how we can just make good decisions as an organization continually to build up the roster to where maybe you can prop up a Sam Darnold then, if you've done it well enough. Maybe you can prop up a Baker Mayfield, or maybe you can turn that guy into what he always should have been elsewhere because you're a well-run organization. So that to me should be the Giants' focus. And I think from the decisions the Giants have been making in recent years, it's quite clear that they have not been a well-run organization, in my opinion. So fix that first. The quarterback will come. I wouldn't worry too much. It's unfortunate, yes. You obviously would rather have the high pick. The game is meaningless. But still, the focus should always be on the organization first, quarterback second.
Mike, I love that you pointed out that they haven't been a well-run organization and that they're the ones who volunteered for off-season Hard Knocks. And we got John Mara saying, I won't be able to sleep at night if Saquon Barkley is successful in the Eagles. Now he's going for the all-time rushing record. And we got to see them just totally undermine Daniel Jones. The season was over. As soon as you saw the clips of them, oh, we'd love to trade for a quarterback. We're trying to get rid of Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones is probably watching that like, what the hell? They didn't tell me that. I thought I was the starter. Their season was thrown away before it started. My God.
Yeah, it's just fix those decisions.
Yeah.
The quarterback play will come. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to our playoff picture and draft order reviews right after this.
If you love football, this is the best time of the year.
This is as big as it gets.
The stuff of absolute dreams.
All right, let's get to the AFC playoff picture where we have a few seeds set in stone at this moment in time. KC will be the 1. Buffalo will be the 2. The Chargers will be a wild card. The Steelers will be a wild card, or will have made the playoffs. Ravens have made the playoffs. I believe it's still up for grabs. Who will be your AFC North champions, but the Ravens play the Browns in week 18, and we just saw DTR, so no need to really rehash that. But the big thing that's up for play here is that last wild card spot. Denver Broncos, Kansas City Chiefs next weekend. Denver wins that game, they're in. Denver loses that game, and Miami or Cincinnati win. If Miami wins, Miami's in. If Miami loses and Cincinnati wins, Cincinnati's in. So I kind of did not explain that well whatsoever. But what do you expect to happen next week? Do the Broncos just end this early and beat the Chiefs that have nothing to play for and have all this drama that we've been talking about and trying to figure out for the past few weeks? Just put it all to bed.
Well, I'm sure that once most people are listening to the audio version of this, the Week 18 schedule will be out. I will not be surprised if the Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals are all playing at the same time, because the NFL loves to do their they don't want you scoreboard peaking. They don't want games to be over earlier. They want to keep everyone equally motivated. Now, again, as a Bengals homer, I would love to say the Bengals are going to make the playoffs, that the Dolphins are going to lose to the New York Jets. And you know what? Maybe if it is Aaron Rodgers' last hurrah, maybe he has that getting on his horse and leaving on a high note and throwing 4 touchdown passes and having a game he hasn't been able to have with the New York Jets. So I think that's going to happen. Probably not, but it's Aaron Rodgers. He has a lot of pride. So I'm not going to count the Jets out. It's really the Chiefs-Broncos game. It is the Chiefs, as you said, they have clinched number 1 seed. They have absolutely nothing to play for. But I do think there's a conundrum there, because if you sit your starters, that means they will go from December 25th to January 18th if they play that Saturday game without playing a game. That is a long stretch of time. And now I know you get fresh, but that freshness can turn into rust. So I'm not sure Andy Reid is going to bench everyone. Patrick Mahomes is not going to play. There's no way you're going to risk his health. But I think you maybe will see a couple guys that a lot of people think will be benched. And then also Carson Wentz, he has a lot to prove. I don't think he's going to go out there and throw 5 interceptions. So if I had a choice of backup quarterbacks to be trying to win this game, Carson Wentz would be pretty high on my totem pole, because I think he is going to want to win and prove that he can still play in the NFL. So I think the Broncos get the spot, but I think the Chiefs-Broncos game will be a lot closer than most people think.
I love that. Just hearing you talk about it all, you didn't explicitly say it, but it was definitely a Bengals lens. I heard like the tilt was like they could lose. They could lose also, and then the Bengals could win. Could all very much happen. Then the Bengals could also lose to the Steelers next week. Unfortunately, that's happened to themselves before. But I do think that, one, I think the Broncos do win. I agree that just like they have so much to play for. Chiefs nothing to play for. That's always a situation where in the NFL, such a physical game. I mean, we saw so many games this week with the teams that had nothing to play for just got their ass handed to them. Usually more often than not, the team with something to play for at the end of the season wins those games. But I do think there's a very good chance the Dolphins lose next week. One, because Tua didn't even play this week. And we saw that offense look like, well, what that offense has looked like all season long without Tua. And so if he can't go next week against the New York Jets, they will not move the ball in that Jets defense. Even if he does go, it's a cold weather game in New York, which has been Tua's kryptonite over the years. So that is no easy one. Unfortunately, though, I think it's too little, too late. Week 1 is when they should have beat the Patriots for the Cincinnati Bengals. They'd be already in the playoffs. Let's get to the NFC, where Minnesota, as it currently stands, 14-2, is your 1 seed at this moment in time. But obviously, Detroit has something to say about that. They play the 49ers in a what is now almost meaningless game, because should the Vikings and Lions tie in Week 18, all of a sudden it does not become meaningless, because they were a tie and the Lions win tomorrow. The Lions are your 1 seed. If they tie and the Lions lose tomorrow, the Vikings are your 1 seed. So Eagles now officially locked into the 2 seed. They cannot get the 1 seed. They needed the Vikings to lose this week. And actually they needed the Lions to lose this week to get back in that 1 seed conversation. That didn't happen. They will be the 2 seed. Your 3 seed is kind of technically still up for grabs. The West is kind of still technically up for grabs. We hit on that earlier, but more likely than not, the Rams look destined to be your West champs. Who gets the 3? Who gets the 4 between the Rams, the Bucs, the Falcons? Still TBD. Obviously, the Falcons play tonight against the Commanders. Big one for them. And then they play the Panthers in Week 18. And the Commanders could actually still miss the playoffs. They're at 10-5. If they lose to the Falcons this week and lose to the Cowboys in Week 18, and the Bucs win next week, and the Falcons win next week as well, Washington will be headed home. So do we anticipate from this map right here that we see on our screen, do we anticipate any movement from that order?
The Commanders scenario is interesting just because it's not completely implausible. Of course, again, once most people listen to this, that game, the Commanders-Falcons game will be over and we'll know for sure. But if they were to lose, then that definitely opens the door for them to miss it. I think that the Rams, and that's the other thing, the Rams are going to have an interesting thing because if they win against the Seahawks, maybe they have nothing to play for as far as winning the division. But I think you probably prefer to be the 3 seed so you can avoid the Vikings or Lions. So I think this probably sticks. I'm going to say the Lions beat the Vikings. You know what is a real conundrum, Renner, is the Lions Monday night game against the 49ers. As you said, it doesn't really mean anything unless ties get involved. So there's been no ties this year. So we'll say there's no ties involved. I know Dan Campbell said he's not going to rest his starters, but you're playing on a Monday night on a short week with the possibility for a bye, number 1 seed the following week in week 18. I think I know he makes crazy decisions all the time, but I think he would be crazy to play all his players on Monday night. So we'll see what he does. But I think the Lions get the 1 seed, Eagles 2, Rams 3, Buccaneers 4, Vikings 5, and the Packers could fall to 7. The Commanders could steal the 6th seed. So I'll say the Commanders go 6 and Packers go 7.
Oh, okay. I still think the Packers end up. I don't know. We'll see. They have nothing to play for next week.
Let me ask you that. If the Packers have that on the line where, hey, you win, you're guaranteed the 6th spot, but if you bench everyone, you might get stuck in the 7th spot. Do you care, or are you staring at that saying, we'd rather play the Rams than the Eagles?
See, I think NFL coaches they're wired to play it. If there's anything on the line, they're wired to play it. And like, even we go back to Dan Campbell on Monday night, and even it just being the tie on the line, but even if there was truly nothing on the line, like it truly didn't matter, I don't think Dan Campbell would rest anyone. I just don't think he's built that way. I think a lot of NFL coaches need a big excuse, need true nothing to play for. We're beat up already. Need that before they're even going to rest anyone.
Lions are pretty beat up.
They actually are very beat up. So maybe they do fall into that category. But no, I don't anticipate that happening. And I bet the Packers play it straight up just because playing the 2 seed versus the 3 seed seems like it's going to be a big, big difference in this year's NFC. All right, let's get to the draft order where we have a shakeup at the top. Officially, as it stands right now, your top 5: New England Patriots at 1, Tennessee Titans at 2, Cleveland Browns 3, New York Giants 4, Jacksonville Jaguars at number 5. And the schedules for those: Patriots play the Bills, Titans play the Texans. Excuse me, I got that wrong earlier. The Browns play the Ravens, Giants play the Eagles, and the Jags play the Colts. Do we see? Gosh, I think New England Patriots at 1 is going to be very interesting because everything we've seen from Drake May says they don't need a quarterback and will not be drafting a quarterback. So which of those teams after 1 is the most desperate to get up to number 1? Who do we think makes the play to still go up to number 1 and get a quarterback, or does that not happen at all?
Well, it's crazy because I feel like the Browns desperately need a quarterback, but you also have somebody under contract who makes $46 million guaranteed per year for the next 2 seasons. So that throws a little wrench into drafting someone, but I don't see – but it also feels like they've been tanking for the past 2 weeks. Why else bench Jameis Winston for a guy who is not going to be able to run your offense? We mentioned DTR multiple times already. So I feel like the Browns are almost a lock to lose, but I think it's if the Patriots lose, they get the number 1 seed, which is going to be interesting because we're going to have a lose-off. You're going to have the Bills playing for nothing, and the Patriots also want to lose so they can get the number 1 pick. But the thing is, I think Drake May, you throw your rookie quarterback out there, he's not going to want to lose. He's wired to win. So I am going to say that the Patriots win, and so do not get the number 1 pick, but that doesn't hurt them as much as it would the other teams because they don't need a quarterback. So who is it? Browns or Titans? The Titans play the Texans?
Yeah, who also have nothing to play for. So they'll probably be benching their starters.
Oh, man. Let's give the number 1 pick to the Browns. Cleveland needs it. They need something right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the team that if I were to say should make the move, I think they'd be the perfect team to do it because I just think they're too good, right? They were in the playoffs last year, right? They were, and that was with Joe Flacco and with Deshaun Watson playing so horribly. And as soon as Jameis Winston came in, they beat the Ravens. This is a team that has talent at so many different positions and still has a little bit of a window here. And yeah, they're in just the worst cap situation because of Deshaun Watson, and they're trying to make some cap magic by pushing even more money, even further out with it to spread it out so they can try to win games sooner than later. And because of that, they're not going to be back in that quarterback mix. So it'll take from 3 to 1. It'll take some picks. It'll probably take somewhere in the neighborhood of like maybe a future first. But if you're the Patriots, I don't think they want to move down too far themselves because they want Travis Hunter. You want a guy who's like a rare, special crossover wide receiver / cornerback. Like you don't want to move down to number 8 in this year's draft or someone like the Raiders and do a deal that, the Bears did with the Panthers, because I think there's not that many blue chip guys that you're not going to be trading down that far to get one. So it'll be very interesting to see play out. But yeah, we have the weirdest week 18 on tap for you guys because it's just going to be teams that don't care about winning, playing teams that are actively trying to lose. And that's just a interesting spot for NFL and NFL teams to be in my opinion.
Absolutely. That's what makes week 18 so awkward.
It really is for the NFL. All right, there you have it. That's our show for today. We will be back on Tuesday. Me, Kyle Long, Pete Prisco, breaking down Pete's power rankings heading into week 18. Until then, keep pushing.